Crucifixion of Jesus according to the Gospel of Mark. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." With him they crucified two bandits, one on the right, one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "Ah, you who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "Listen, he's calling for Elijah." Someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come and take him down." Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. Today is not a day for explaining the cross. Today is a day for acknowledging the cross. Today is not a day for theological interpretations on the significance of Jesus' death. It is a day for witnessing the experience of utter forsakenness of the Son of God, whose final prayer was not a confident word of assurance, but an agonizing cry of despair. My God, why have you forsaken me?" Today is not a day to simply retell the horror of Jesus' death. It is a day to acknowledge our own forsakenness. Today we remember the events surrounding Jesus' death so that we can locate our own life and death experiences in His. Jesus' cry of agony invites us, demands us to acknowledge the agony that we carry in our lives. Jesus' prayer of forsakenness demands that we acknowledge our own experiences of abandonment of being completely alone and cut off and cast aside and forgotten. Today is not a day to make bold proclamations of faith. It is a day to acknowledge our deepest doubts and fears and uncertainties. As followers of Jesus, the cross is the beginning. Before anything else, we must strip away everything that keeps us from facing our own experience of forsakenness. Today is a day for us to acknowledge our deepest vulnerabilities, knowing that we will not be rescued or delivered from them. When hope is lost, then God. This past week I've been thinking about the difference between hospital and hospice. Hospital is where we flee to avoid death. Hospital is where our vulnerabilities trigger alarms and our symptoms become the primary preoccupation of every interaction. Hospital is a depersonalizing environment where every interaction is focused on diagnosing problems, prescribing remedies, measuring outcomes. Vitals are checked, blood is tested, medications are administered, progress is charted. Every touch has a diagnostic purpose. Every question is evaluative. Every interaction is focused on symptoms and remedies and outcomes. The harder we work to avoid death in hospital, the more dehumanizing the setting becomes. But hospice is just the opposite. Because hospice begins with the willingness to acknowledge the imminence of death, it is one of the most hospitable places on this planet. Because we have abandoned our efforts to stave off death in hospice, we are able to be attentive to each other in some of the most profound ways. We sit for hours with each other, keeping vigil. Sometimes, without saying a word, just making ourselves available to each other. We share our vulnerabilities with each other. Our proud moments, our moments of deep regret, our hopes and our fears, our joys and our sorrows. We profess our deep love for each other. We touch each other affectionately, caressing and kissing and holding each other tight. We are gentle and thoughtful and tender with each other in hospice. When we know that death is imminent, we are most fully alive. Our culture presses us to live hospital lives, preoccupied with symptoms and remedies and measurements of progress, so concerned with avoiding death that many never experience the fullness of life. But tonight the cross of Jesus invites us to live in hospice, embracing our vulnerability, acknowledging that there is nothing and no one, not even God, who will rescue us from death. That's the starting point. That's what makes it possible for us to be fully human. That's what makes it possible to love deeply, to be merciful, to be compassionate, to share hospitality, to treat each other with dignity and tenderness and respect. Tonight is a night for remembering that forsakenness is the beginning of life with God.